Good morning, everybody. So today we're going to review an article concerned to the transforming fair use in copyright infringement between Goldsmith versus Warhol. The U.S. Supreme Court of Appeal for the Second Circuit in the anti-Warhol Foundation for the Visual Art (INC) versus Lynn Goldsmith and Lynn Goldsmith Ltd. has ruled that contemporary artist Andy Warhol 1984 images of musical artist Prince did not make fair use of photographer Lingo Smith 1981 photograph of the music legend, overturning the 2019 decision from the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. At its core, this matter involved a conflict between an artist's right to express ideas including the creation of original work, incorporating pre-existing material, and a right of creator to control his original work. The Anti-Warhol Foundation has petitioned for panel rehearing and rehearing en blanc, arguing the Second Circuit decision departed from established fair use precedent and will have far-reaching consequences. In response, Goldsmith filed its opposition to the motion for rehearsal. The ultimate outcome of this case will have significant impact on art law and copyright law more generally. And here we go to the background. This case involved a series of 16 seal screen, print, and pencil illustration created by the late Andy Warhol. The series is based on a 1981 photograph of late musical artist, print taken by Lynn Goldsmith, to which she holds a registered copyright. Goldsmith is a professional photographer and founder of Lynn Goldsmith Ltd., whose work concentrated on celebrity. Andy Warhol is recognized for his substantial contribution to contemporary art in mass media. In particular, Warhol fame is most attributed to his seal screen portrait of modern icons, each of which is readily recognizable as a Warhol. AWF holds title to and copyright in much of Warhol work. After Warhol died in 1987, AWF acquired title to and copyright the print series. In 2016, following Prince's death, Goldsmith claimed that she first became aware of the print series and notified AWF of the alleged violation of her copyright in the photos. 1 year later, in 2017, AWF brought suit for a declaratory judgment against Goldsmith and LGL, alleging that the print series works were not infringing or, in the alternative, that they make fair use of Goldsmith photographs. Goldsmith and LGL counter sue for infringement. And what's the district court decision? The district court, in a decision by Judge John J. Currat, granted summary judgment to AWF on its assertion of fair use and dismissed Goldsmith and LGL counterclaim. In his opinion, Judge Cole explained that fair use is a statutory exception to copyright infringement and recited for statutory factors used to determine whether a use is fair. First, the purpose and character of the use. Second, the nature of the copyrighted work. Third, the substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole, and the effect on the potential market for or value of the copyrighted works. Although the district court found that the use of the Prince series was commercial, it decided overall that the use was fair primarily because it was transformative. The Goldsmith photo depicted an up-and-coming insecure artist, and the Warhol depicted a widely successful music legend. The court found that the accused works have a different characters emblematic of Warhol that give Goldsmith photograph a new expression by employing new aesthetic with creative and communicative result distinct from Goldsmith. Further, the new work adds something new to the world of art, and the public would be deprived of this contribution. Its work could not be distributed. As such, the court found that the first most important value factors weighed strongly in AWF factor favor, finding that all the factors weighed in favor of AWF, aside from the commercial nature of the work. The court ultimately held that the use was fair. Second Circuit appeal. Goldsmith appealed to the Second Circuit primarily argued in that the district court conclusion regarding transformative use were grounded in a subjective underlying artistic message of the work rather than an objective assessment of their purpose and character. The Second Circuit sided with Goldsmith and reversed, disagree with the district court only in the determination that the use were commercial. Disagree with the district court on all other factors that district court had found weight in favor of AWF. The court first explained that the fair use defense aimed to strike a balance between a copyright owner's right to his work, including the right to license and develop derivative work, and other right to express themselves with transformative use of the original work. The court grappled with the distinction between transformative and derivative works for the entire decision. As to transformative use, the court explained that the focus is chiefly on the degree to which the use is transformative, and specifically on whether the new work merely superseded the object of the original creation, or instead add something new with a further purpose of different characters, altering the first with new expression, meaning, or message. The appellate court acknowledged that in its finding of transformativeness, the district court relied on an early Second Circuit decision, Carayu versus Prince, but noticed that Carayu has not been immune from criticism, and worse, the high water mark of the court recognition of transformative work. Carayu was a case involving Patrick Carayu black and white photograph of Rastafarian being used as the raw material by appropriation artist Richard Prince in creating his work. In that case, the Second Circuit concluded that the work were transformed by the creation of new information, new aesthetic, new insight and understanding. While criticizing the district court for stretching the decision in Karayu too far, the court also acknowledged that alteration of an original work with new expression, meaning, or message, whether by use of new aesthetic, by placing work in different contexts, or by another means, is the sine qua non of transformativeness. But this found it does not follow, however, that any secondary work that add a new aesthetic or new expression to its source material is necessarily transformative. Instead, the court noted there exists an entire class of secondary work that add new expression, meaning, or message to their source material, but are nonetheless specifically excluded from the scope of fair use. Derivative works, the panel, constitute where a secondary work does not obviously comment on or relate back to the original or the use of the original for a purpose other than that for which it were created. The bare assertion of a higher or different artistic use is insufficient to render a work transformative. And this instead is derivative and intrinsic. So within this case, not really easy for us to understand, and it's going for a very long discussion for the panel today, and it's very exciting to discuss with other people today. For this case, and this case, one of the case I use for to apply for Fulbright scholarship in order to create a harmonization of the modern technology. They show how many things concerned to the three-step test, and also for the future cases of what is a derivative work and what's it really fair use doctrine in this case. For the finding of transformativeness, the secondary work needs to reasonably be perceived as embodying an entirely distinct artist's purpose, on thus conveying a new meaning of message entirely separate from its source material. The court found that the work that fall within this ambit are often works that draw from numerous sources, rather than work that simply alters or recast a single work with a new aesthetic. Further, according to this count, whether a work is transformative cannot turn merely on the stated or perceived intent of the artist or the meaning or impression that the critic or for that matter a judge draw from the work. A judge is not an art critic. Rather, the judge must examine whether the secondary work's use of each source material is in service of a fundamentally different and new artist purpose and characters. Should that secondary works stand apart from the raw material used to create it? The secondary work transformative purpose and characters must at the base medium comprise something more than the imposition of other artist style on the primary work such that the secondary work remain both recognizably deriving from and retaining the essential element of its source material, acknowledging Warhol's distinctive style and observing that Warhol had clearly alters the aesthetic of Goldsmith's photograph. The Second Circuit noted that these visual differences do not render Warhol's rendition transformative. The Prince series work retained essential elements for their source material. The modification made by Warhol only modify some element and minimize others, and Goldsmith photograph remain a recognizable foundation upon which the Prince series is built. In its analysis, the court analogs Jai to a novel adapted into a screenplay, a work that is definitively viewed as a derivative work, despite the film market influence on the film. Warhol adaptation of Goldsmith photograph were seen as just an adaptation of the original work and therefore an infringed derivative use. Petition for rehearing on Blanche. In its motion for rehearing on Bonk, AWF argued that original panel decision conflict with Supreme Court and Second Circuit precedent and create a circuit split on an issue of exceptional importance to copyright and free expression. AWF is joined by amici who have filed briefs arguing the same, claiming that the appellate panel departed from the principle defined in Campbell and upheld in the recent Google versus Oracle decision. AWF argued that the panel rejection of the well-known and often used different meaning and message analysis in favor of an analysis that determined whether works were reasonably derived from and retain the essential element of its source material was in error. AWF petition differentiated film adaptation of a novel by noting that the adaptation of novels does not express a new message. Here, the petition argued that the Prince series communicate the opposite message from Goldsmith photograph. Example, the strength of the well-known artist brings instead of the vulnerability of the up-and-coming artist brings. First, the petition argued the Prince series is transformative. The petition cited decision by the U.S. Court of Appeal for the First, Fourth, Sixth, Ninth, and the Federal Circuit, where the court have found transformative use when the work convey a different message from the original work and argue that the Goldsmith decision create circuit split. Finally, the petition claimed that the panel decision will have extraordinary and harmful effect in an area of exceptional public importance insofar as it threatened to render unlawful large swath of contemporary art that incorporated and reframed copyright material to convey a new and different message. AWF conclude by claiming the court holding will inevitably change the creation of similar art in the future and will deter many artists from using existing imagery in the service of new and different creative expression. Eviscerating the First Amendment safeguard that fair use were meant to provide. Goldsmith, in his opposition to the brief, argued that the decision were entirely in line with the Google decision, which also was in line with established fair use law. And in any event, Google did not directly apply because it concerned a functional computer code, not an artist's work. In responding to the court request to address the impact of Google, Goldsmith noted that the Supreme Court in Google expressly stated the decision were not changing a legal framework for assessing fair use. Instead, the Supreme Court is emphasized we do not overturn or modify our earlier cases involving fair use. Goldsmith further argued that Google emphasized that the use of fair use is case specific and that the unique feature of computer court influence the Supreme Court application of settled fair use principle in that case, thus making Google consistent with the panel decision. Goldsmith brief this not which the other point discussed in WF brief and by Amici. Impact of decision on its stand. So we have the impact of decision, and let's go to an end. In this Supreme Court hearing, they decide many cases concerning the fair use of the Googles and other cases. It's very interesting case. And the panel decision that the Prince series were not transformative, but instead closer to derivative purported to clarify the court prior position in Carrier, while also maintaining the basic of the Supreme Court 1985 Harper and Row decision finding no fair use when a secondary work took the heart of the original work. However, this decision leaves artists and litigants without a clear test to determine whether a work that is based on a single other work is transformative and therefore fair use, or derivative and therefore an infringing use. The panel directed that the inquiry regarding whether work is transformative concentrate on whether the works had fundamentally different and new artistic works and characters suggest secondary works stand apart from the raw material used to create it. While it would seem to follow that this analysis requires a court to decide whether the secondary work does stand apart from the source material, the panel confusingly and explicitly stated that the court should not make inherently subjective judgment regarding an artist's intended meaning of the artwork at issue at court are not art critics. What then is the panel direction to lower court on how to engage in a fair use inquiry of whether an allegedly infringed work is substantially similar to the originals? Are we left with a system where Section 106 of the Copyright Act, in granting a creator the exclusive right to creative work, negate the protection of the Section 107 defense of fair use? Or the Second Circuit returning to a more restrictive views that follow the literal interpretation of the Section 107, which provide a safe harbor for purposes such as criticism, comment, new reporting, or teaching, notwithstanding the provision of Section 106 and 106A. Can fair use only be asserted when the new works comment on or criticize the source of work? Can a photograph of another copyrighted work even be deemed a transformative use if the photograph captures the source work in its entirety, such as photograph of painting, street art, or copyrighted food labor? While the panel rulings distinguish the importance of a work being transformative as compared to derivative The implication of this classification likely will be further clarified by the decision on the petition for rehearing and rehearing on Blanc, and perhaps through petition for certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court. Until such time as this issue is further clarified, artist, musician, photographer, and other creator of work should be aware of this decision is not fighting a fair use, seems to require that their works stand apart from any source material on which they basis that their work have fundamentally different in the artistic purpose and characters. All right. So we can see more in the 17 USC 107 Harper versus World Publisher versus Nation Inter and Campbell Acroprose Music, also carry you in Prince. So that's it from the Intellectual Property Technology Law Journal, August 2021. All right. Thank you for your listening.